Thank you for attending the press conference today. Over the weekend, the incumbent government moved into its fifth and final year in government. 4 years that expired, and this is their 5th year being the government of Guyana. And predictably, the Ministry of the Presidency issued a press release lauding their achievements over the past 4 years in office. And the press release was quite bizarre because once again it repeated what we believe is a symptom of a disease, aloof mind. The multiple lies that they have told to Guyanese people about their achievements, their long list of achievements. And when people try to, ordinary people across Guyana, even APNU supporters, try to match those achievements with the reality of life on the ground, they find a huge gap between them. And so the government, if I just summarize what they lauded as their achievement, was the return of democracy to Guyana. 2, they said that their policies have impacted favorably on every aspect of life in Guyana, from the coastland to the hinterland in our riverine and indigenous communities. So everyone has benefited from all of these policies. They lauded the increase, the old age pension and social assistance increase. They talk about securing 10,000 jobs to sugar workers. They talk about support to our rice farmers. And they talk about ending pervasive corruption. Now, this is the statement from the government about their achievements in the past 4 years. But what's the truth? What's the reality of life in Guyana today? And so we know for a fact that over 30,000 persons who were working at the time this government took office have lost their jobs. That's 30,000 Guyanese who were working and feeding their families and earning an income and having the dignity of work, now no longer have a job because of the policies of this government. Secondly, we know that they are not attracting major new investments. Outside of the oil and gas sector, which started under the PPP, their investments have dried up, totally, foreign investments. And local investment is almost non-existent now. Non-existent. The only thing that a few people are benefiting from are the high prices for land in prime locations where the oil companies want to locate 1 or 2 of their facilities. That's the only thing that is happening. But foreign investments as well as local investments have dried up. So we have not only lost jobs, but the prospect of creating new jobs is diminished. Because oil and gas, as I said before, will give us 2,000 new jobs, and we lost 30,000 jobs, and we're not going to create many new jobs in the other sectors. So it's going to get progressively worse. Secondly, we know for a fact that this government has increased taxes and is now collecting $88 billion more per year than what the PPP collected in 2014. $88 billion more. That's coming from ordinary people as well as the business community. So you're paying more taxes on your food, on your clothing, because they've increased the valuation rates at customs. You're paying more taxes on water, on electricity, etc. that were not there before. In fact, some of them didn't have any VAT or any tax. So that's a fact of life. They're taking $88 billion more per year out of people's pockets. Fourthly, they have borrowed 900 million US dollars from a combination of foreign and local sources. So the total debt when we left was about $1.1 billion. That is after 23 years. They have almost borrowed the equivalent of that whole sum from that is one of the things, their achievement in the last 4 years. We have seen a skyrocketing of the cost of living. That's number 5. So as I said, if you go look at your water bill, your electricity bill, almost everything, the licenses that you have to pay for, everything has gone up. So I was speaking to some housewives yesterday, and they said to me, we have to now take more money to the supermarket to get the same items or the market that we were getting before. So cost of living has gone up. Crime is on the increase, but what is even worse is that we have no plan to address it, except some inane utterings from a useless minister. Absolutely none. So that is their track record. The incompetence is almost unbelievable. 4 years of incompetence. Healthcare has declined. People confront that every single day when they go to the hospitals. And then for them to say they've ended pervasive corruption, when this is the most corrupt government in our entire history, in the colonial times as well as since we're independent. Every single week there's a new scandal involving some APNU person or a minister. Every single week. So that is their achievement in 4 years, instead of what they're saying. And then on the democracy side, that they laud as making strides on democracy. They love to speak about local government elections. Oh, we held local government elections after a long period, and 2 local government elections. So we have seen the list that they used for local government elections was perfect, the voters list, but we saw how they sought to rig the elections by forging candidates' signature. That's the true nature of the APNU. And when you talk about democracy, here is where the no confidence vote was concerned. It is unheard of in the British Commonwealth that a government would behave the way it has done in relation to any no confidence vote that it suffers, where it refuses to accept the no confidence vote and acts with impunity, says it's business as usual. That is unheard of. This is their democratic credential. And then when you go to the court, you threaten unrest if the decision goes against you, and that comes from the Attorney General. This is their credential, their democratic credential. So this has been, we have had 4 years of failure, 4 years of deterioration. And some people say, oh, it's only 4 years. That's their new excuse. Well, how much longer do we need to understand that this government doesn't have a vision, and every single year that they stay in office, we are going to slide downwards, oil money or no oil money, every single year they stay in office. So the 4 years argument is enough to show us a trend in government, what is happening already with this government, that we don't need to see more, because the longer they stay there, there's no plan for improving. And so when I look at this, it's bothered me. So let us go to ordinary people. Because when the government says these things, it sounds nice on paper. If you're a rice farmer, how have your life improved? First of all, they said they open new markets. But the rice farmers, they cut $1 billion from drainage and irrigation. They've increased their land charges for rice farmers. So significant sums, sometimes by 300–400% land and water rates. They've removed the taxes from fertilizers and pesticides. They put taxes on fertilizer and pesticides, and they put taxes on your machinery. So that's it. Are the farmers better off today? The answer is no. Let's talk about the miners, the small miners who voted overwhelmingly. What have they had from this government? The first thing is that they had a 2% final tax under the PPP. This government removed it and increased it to a 28% tax. It's no longer final tax. After the public outcry and we said we'll reverse it, they brought it down back, but moved it on a sliding scale from 2 to 3.5%. So we made it clear we'll go back to 2%. So the miners have seen a deterioration. They increased the tributers tax by 100%. We had to fight to get it down back. That is the taxes that the miners collected. They have passed legislation to say that if the small miners don't have records when GRA approaches them, they can go to jail now. How many small miners have records in the hinterland of their purchases? Who will give them a receipt if they buy 2 drums of fuel? They have not spent any money. We've seen the sad story of hinterland roads. How are the miners going to carry their equipment into the hinterland? And you see Lethem Road now, once again, in a disastrous state. But I'm talking about other mining roads. They've increased the taxes now, the 14% tax. They put it on the VAT on machinery and equipment for mining. So the miners now, that's on. Miners now have to pay to sell their gold to the gold board. I give you 5 policies that have led to a decline in the lot of the environment for our miners. So are the miners better off now today? In the 4 years, they're worse off. Let's talk about sugar workers. Sugar workers have lost 7,000 jobs, and people surrounding the sugar industry, another 4,000 or 5,000 jobs. Are the sugar workers better off today? They've done that. They have not received any increase. The remaining workers have not received a single salary increase for all 4 years. 0%. First time in our history, even under Burnham. They've dismantled the arrangement that had been there since Burnham era for the API, the Annual Production Incentive. 60-something years that had been in place, they discontinued that. The workers had to fight for their severance. Are sugar workers better off today? Let's talk about taxi drivers and people who do public transport. What has been their environment? Today, they have to pay more for licenses. They now can't find the used tires any more longer, because this government believes we must only use new tires in Guyana. They ban used tires. And so soon, as soon as that kicks in fully, we're going to be in trouble. Although in the US, they sell used tires. And then they ban vehicles over 8 years old. So now if you buy a taxi or some vehicle for public transport, you have to pay more, because the vehicles, that has added a premium price for the more recent vehicles. So they're worst off today too, the taxi drivers. Let's talk about the children of Guyana. They took away $8 billion in 4 years from the children of Guyana. $8 billion. If you take $10,000 per year multiply by 167,000 school kids we had, multiply by 4 years in office, 4 years in office, this is what you'll get. So you now have close to $8 billion that in the period that they'll be in this 5 years in office, because they will take it away from this year too. So the children, they've taken away money from them. They're worse off. Let's talk about the pensioners. So they put here the increased pensions. And now the pensioners have higher electricity bill. They used to get a subsidized electricity, and they had free water. Now, if you talk to many pensioners, they show you their bills, $47,000, $30,000 in water bills. And it was free in the past under the PP. The pensioners have lost out. The students at the University of Ghana, they too, they have lost out. They have to pay 35% more on their fees that they had before. So who is really benefiting? Who is really benefiting? What about the forestry workers? People, we're producing about half of what we were producing in 2014. The Forestry Commission has gone bankrupt, but thousands have lost jobs in the sector because they've increased taxes on the machinery and equipment for forestry. So I'm trying to find out who is really benefiting. It can't be the businessmen, because they're complaining all the time about more taxes. So who really is benefiting if it is not the vendors, definitely. Not the vendors, not ordinary people. But it is this cabal that is in government, the ministers, their friends, and their family. And you see this in the contracts that they awarded. I pointed out just a few weeks ago that this 20% that they say they want to give to small contractors is the cover for them to give their families and friends contract. And we've seen it already. They take their own. You don't have to go very far. It's the Minister of Housing, Minister of Telecommunications, but there are almost every minister now is in some business with companies linked to them, doing business in their own ministries and in their government. And this is how they ended pervasive corruption. In 4 years of this government, they've only submitted Integrity Commission statement once. From 2000 to 2014, the PPP submitted, the ministers and others, every single year, their statements to the Integrity Commission. They talk about restoring the image of Guyana and their achievement. And the first U.S. State Department report to say that government corruption is a source of money laundering now. First time in our history. That's how they restore international reputation. Two, we're now known around the world for a government that will hang on to power at any cost and not respect democracy and no confidence motion. People are laughing us around the world that you would argue that 34 is the majority of 65. We become the laughing stock of the region and anyone who is familiar with Ghana. And as though if that is not enough, we're now known around the world for a parliament that honors a convicted terrorist. And this is how they restore the image of Guyana. Now, the people, we just believe we're totally incompetent. I pointed out you had a huge oil and gas function in Texas a few weeks ago, where the government should have showcased Guyana and speak about our policies and the policy framework that we have developed. We were absent there. Foreigners are defining how the oil sector must go in Guyana. And guess who will be left out? Our people, if they're defining where we will go because of the incompetence of this government. And I heard the presentation about Guyana. Somebody made a presentation, and in the presentation, they didn't talk about oil and gas. They said, oh, Guyana is in the northern part of South America, as though the people who attended the conference wouldn't know where Guyana is. Everybody knows that now because we have 5 billion barrels of potential oil out there. That's their presentation. And I know we have 30 birds in 200 and something bird species in Georgetown. That is the kind of thing people laugh at you when you go to international conferences with this kind of wishy-washy approach. Governments. This is the image of the country. We have a missing government. They don't do anything except the shows, cutting ribbons, outreaches, etc. And they talk about 4 years of achievement. They said we ended blackout too. That's one. Every year they put out an ad, they ended blackout. Not only are we having blackout now, but there's no plan to put in new generating capacity. They said they ended floods. But the PPP now hired a brigade of people to throw garbage, so we may have some more floods in the future. So we throw garbage now in some of the drains for them to have a flood and bad name. That's the silliness that we have for government today. We have a government where all the ministers are implicated in scandals, or many of them, and the president goes and without holding a press conference says, I'll be reshuffling or moving permanent secretaries. Not the ministers who were caught up in the scandal, but the permanent secretaries. He lives in a different world. We want to see the ministers get sanctioned. So one minister gets transferred, but she says, not demotion, I get my everything else. And they ended pervasive corruption. So we have had 4 years of failure. None of their manifesto promises are fulfilled. In the housing sector, in 4 years, they've not developed a single house lot. In 4 years, they've not developed a single house lot. They're now taking back land and giving to other people. So where is this achievement? Who is it really benefiting? But we know that the ministers got a massive increase in their salaries, so they're earning $1 million a month now. We know that they're getting all these perks, a ton of perks, etc. Travels and all kinds of allowances and staff, etc. So their lives have improved, but not ordinary people. And this is regardless of who you support, APNU or PPP. Ordinary Guyanese don't get any help from this government. So that is the great achievement of the government, our government that it speaks about today. And then I saw a very strange thing from I think it was David Hines. Well, David Hines and the others, let me say it to you. They made a living, and they've always made a living, from just speaking about ethnic security and about representing Afro-Guyanese, but in reality, they will just write an article. None of them will, when Afro-Guyanese vendors are faced with repressive actions on the part of the government, they will not be there to fight for them against this government. Or they will never represent them when their land is taken away or something like that. But they would write articles about how well they're doing in this regard. So and now I gather that he has a minister of his preference in the government now. So we expect him to continue with this nonsense. A bunch of big wigs in the APNU got $168 million of taxpayers' money through the parliament, assigned to them to improve the welfare of Afro-Guyanese. What has David Hines and the others done to ensure that that money is being spent on ordinary people rather than the cabal in Georgetown? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So guess what they're doing for ordinary Afro-Guyanese? They're just giving them, they now can get a birth certificate. They will get a birth certificate or something like that because they want them to vote. That's what I saw an outreach organized by the organization to say, you can come to our outreach and we'll give you an application form and you can get a certificate. So David Hines makes one of the strangest statements. He said that in response to a question, and I think he thought I did it myself, he said that Jagdeo said this government is making it easier for them to govern because of the mistakes, easier for the PPP to get back in office because of their mistakes. And then he said he has a different logic. Because they have not achieved anything transformational in 4 years, that is why they must be re-elected. And it would seem strange, and it was bizarre to me that somebody would say this. So the logic is that because they have no achievement, we must re-elect them to have achievements in the future. But given what I've just said, the absence of direction, of political will, of any policy-making talent, the competence in the government, we have no hope that anything transformational will be done at the within the government. So it's a strange logic, but it comes from an apologist. So I just wanted, this was his exact quote. Mistakes of the coalition government has made it easier. Jagdeo's statement that mistakes of the coalition government has made it easier has some logic to it. But I want to pose a different logic. The limited success of the coalition in bringing about large transformation, ironically, is the reason it should be returned to office. And I don't understand if this guy has any respect for intelligence as people of this country and ordinary people. That we must, all the things that I've listed, every single sector, people losing jobs and seeing their lives being dismantled right before them, that we must do, because of this, we must re-elect them. It only comes from an apologist. So I wanted to focus on just a few more things. I want to deal with the democracy issue today. We saw a statement yesterday, a legal opinion from GCOM's lawyer, Excellence Dazel, which says that if the commission doesn't move forward with revising the voters list, not creating a new voters list, that it will be in breach of the law. A point that we have been making for a very long time, that it will be in breach of the law. This is now from the legal officer to GCOM. So predictably, the political commissioners in GCOM, especially in the face of, in the name of Mr. Trotman, suddenly somebody who has been defending all along, the legal officer, suddenly she has become a PPP sympathizer by giving a legal opinion which is consistent with the law. But because this legal opinion runs against all they have been trying to do at GCOM, which is the 3 commissioners plus the chairman working with the government, the executive, to undermine the no confidence motion. And so we will continue. We hope that the CCJ, I do not want to speak much on this matter, but I hope that the CCJ will pay attention to this issue. And the CCJ will also pay attention to the new excuse from Mr. Trotman, the political commissioner at GCOM when he says that they don't have money. Now, we have gone through this issue a million times before in Guyana, that with the constitutional amendment, money budgeted for GCOM is budgeted as a lump sum. Secondly, the Minister of Finance confirmed this in the debates when he said it's a lump sum and GCOM can use it as they see fit. And thirdly, that the laws, the FMAA says that the money has to be, the entire sum has to be, that is over $5 billion, has to be in the account of GCOM 1 month after the appropriation bill is signed into law, which would have been February of 2019. So it's clear by now GCOM should have had $5 billion sitting in their bank account that they can use as they see fit because of the constitutional amendment. They can do that. So when I hear the government saying, oh, the finance secretary can't release the money any longer, that is contrary to the law of Guyana. And secondly, when I hear that they don't have money for an election which will cost just over $2 billion when they have $5 billion sitting in their account, or should have $5 billion sitting in their account that they can use for whatever they see fit, I know it is an excuse. So I believe this is all designed to influence the CCJ to say, oh, they don't have money. Then I saw in the parliament, they sought $3 billion of supplementary. That money, if the CCJ decision goes in our favor, is not needed. And if it didn't go in our favor, it still wouldn't be needed because you wouldn't have elections this year. So it is all a mind game. And then we're very, very unhappy that the Attorney General would go to the courts and argue that if the decision, the no confidence decision, goes against the government, that there'll be unrest in Guyana. So who is promoting violence? We've made it clear that there should be, on the part of the PPP, there'll be no violence in Guyana to pursue our political aims. But the APNU and AFC, the PNC, the old PNC, they have a history of addressing these issues. I have seen a lot of, so Ramjatan, as usual, Ramjatan now has major problems in the party because Trotman has made it clear in a statement that multiple contestants for PM slot counterproductive. That is Trotman. I saw that in the Guyana Times. So, and we know Trotman supports Nagamutu. So Ramjatan has been on this trip to build profile across the country. So last week it was noise nuisance. In fact, the week before was noise nuisance. Last week it was whorehouses he was going after. And this week he says that Bharrat Jagdeo is so cunning and wicked that that firm has nothing to do with public relations, but with brainwashing people through targeted advertisements, the public security minister said. This is with Mercury. Now, how stupid can you get? How stupid can you get? Of course we will advertise, and we will advertise online, but it had nothing to do with Mercury and a U.S. Foreign Public Relations firm. I've made it clear why we had to hire the firm, and secondly, that it's a tragedy that in 2019, we have to hire a firm to counter government lies in Washington and to lobby for free and fair elections in 2019, given the sordid history of the PNC and the 30 years of undemocratic rule. And they've just gotten back into office, and we've seen hundreds of manifestations of it. Look, if you listen to the court hearing at the CCJ, you will see the mindset of the government in their presentations and the answers that they gave to the judges. So that is why we had to hire a firm abroad. But we will advertise, and they know that we have a ton of information on all the corrupt activities that they're engaged in, which we will release over time. So they're saying now that it's fake news. When they were talking about PPP corruption all these years, was not fake news. Now they've had a chance to do 50 audits. They've had a chance, we've urged them to hire a firm for 3 years now to trace people's assets abroad. They refuse to do so. They can't, until now, find money in accounts of any of our MPs or anyone else. That shouldn't be there. They charge people on some procedural issues. When they couldn't do that, it was not fake news then. Listen to what we've exposed. We've said one minister got 3 house lots that we don't even know how she got it for, 3 house lots, how much she paid for it, etc. That was fact. 2, we exposed a few weeks ago that a minister's husband was getting contracts in her ministry. That was a fact. We exposed that another minister had multiple contracts in our own ministries. We have spoken about Patterson breaching the laws. This was confirmed by the Independent Public Procurement Commission in relation to the Demerara Harbor Bridge feasibility study. That confirmed. We've spoken about money missing from the Durban Power project. The Auditor General said 600 million can be accounted for. We pointed out that the sole sourcing of the health contract for the procurement of drugs was illegal. The Public Procurement Commission investigated and confirmed it's illegal. These are all factual things. They're not fake news. So, but they're very worried about this. But this, all this talk about Mercury, etc., is just to give Ramjatan profile because he's challenging for the prime ministership. And either way, for the PPP, it doesn't matter. They're both as useless. Ramjatan, crime is ravaging in the country, and he's not focusing on his own portfolio. This minister has been a failure. 17 persons died under his watch, the worst prison fire ever in our history. The tragedy in the prison, under his watch. We had 23 years in office, none of that happened. He had a second fire at which the entire prison burned down. You have to spend billions of dollars building a new prison now. We've had, I believe, more escape from prisoners in his tenure in the last 4 years than the entire independent history of Guyana. This is his track record. Every single day, gun crimes. We started off with the petty crimes, now the gun crimes have picked up. And he talks about, oh, the PPP want to rig the elections by brainwashing Guyanese, as though Guyanese could be brainwashed with ads. This is the comedy that we have in government, a missing president and all of these ministers useless. And I pointed out about the oil and gas sector, that we are not leading on anything. We don't know what's going on. There's a policy vacuum already in government. The Nagamotu and Guyana must now become a hotspot for terrorism. And you just honored a convicted terrorist in the National Assembly. And then had one of your MPs from Linden defend the action. And refuse to apologize to Guyanese or anyone else for your actions. This is a permanent stain on Guyana, that our parliament honored a convicted terrorist. And the people around the world who've been victims of terrorism must be wondering what the hell is going on in Guyana. So he says that. And so Trotman says they want to support dual citizenship. And then Nagamotu says people should not have split loyalty to Guyana. So this is what he says a true Guyanese is not allowed split loyalty towards Guyana. speaking on this dual citizenship issue. So now, I'm sure he doesn't support the dual citizenship issue, but what has happened to those ministers who had dual citizenship and have now gotten jobs in the government? So I pointed out a few weeks ago that the taxpayers of this country already have a top-heavy, we're carrying a top-heavy corrupt government. And we will now have to carry another layer. So we had new MPs appointed to replace those who were dual citizens. We have a new set of ministers. And what happened to the 4 ministers? Now they have cushy, high-paying jobs in the government. Again, if this is not an incestuous, corrupt cabal, nothing is. No one is. And so, Mr. Carl Greenidge, I supported his retention in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the purpose of ensuring continuity on the border matter, which is a matter that we don't treat in a political fashion. That it's not partisan, we have a national position on. But he has become the Foreign Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with responsibility for the Department of Frontiers and Territorial Integrity and the Department of Trade and Economic Cooperation. So what is the portfolio of the minister? And even the choice of the word, Foreign Secretary. In the UK, the Foreign Secretary is the minister. That's the choice of the word. And what happens to the Director General? What is that person's portfolio now? And it's all confusion at the ministry. I'm sure it will be confusion there, total confusion. So Mr. Dominic Gaskin has been appointed Director of Manufacturing and Marketing within the Ministry of the Business. Now, one, you move from minister to a director in your ministry. And two, what are his skills to be a Director of Manufacturing and Marketing? As far as I know, he has absolutely no technical qualification there. This should be a technical position. So a politician, for convenience, has replaced, without any competitive process, a technical staff. And he has no competence in the area. It's a sinecure position to support this. And Dr. Rupert Roopnarine has been appointed Director of Public Service Training. You know, it's the same thing. We have the same issue there. Rupert has not functioned a single day in government. And now they just give him another sinecure position. This is precisely what we are saying. This cabal looks out for itself. Corrupt ministers, tons of contracts, everything that goes for themselves, and they defend each other. So now, if there was any hope in Guyana that we'd see the last of these ministers, that's not so. So when Nagamutu speaks about no split loyalty to Guyana, dual citizens, the person who is still in charge of the Frontier Division is a dual citizen. So does he have split loyalty? Or Harman, would Harman have split loyalty, since Nagamutu is opposed to that? And he's not a true Guyanese, no. Only a true Guyanese cannot have split loyalty. So Harman can be a true Guyanese according to the logic, or anyone else. So these are just some of the things I wanted to talk about. We've seen a $3 billion, they sought $8 billion of supplementary in the parliament, $8 billion in a supplementary budget. That is more money for themselves. And we're going to come back to this issue more and expose what's going on in the parliament. We'll come back to it at some point in time in the future. Because part of the supplementary that they're seeking is to pay for the outreaches for these ministers, the political process. Imagine they killed the budget already. They killed the budget. So they're now going to Parliament for more money for that process. So we'll address that. Now, there are lots of people have been coming I saw Basil Williams. A letter has been circulating that is devastating because obviously it's being done by someone who knows what's happening in his ministry. So he blames the PPP for it, an anonymous letter, but he should deal with the content of the letter. So he, as usual, he blames the PPP for it. We are getting tons of information from PPP, and so a lot of people have been asking me, how can we share information with you? A lot of them come here and drop off stuff from the public service, etc. So I want to say to people now, their Facebook page, if you have anything, and all of this information will be treated anonymously and confidentially. The Facebook page, if you go and search for Corruption Watch 592, you can then on that Facebook page send us information about some of the things that are happening in your sector, especially the public servants, etc. And then the WhatsApp number is 653-6637, because people have been asking how they can send us information on all of these corrupt practices that seem to be proliferating and seems to have gotten worse after the no confidence motion, as though they're preparing hay for another day, you know. And so I just end the press conference there and open the floor for questions. My presentation.
Mr. Jagdeo, from Ghana Times. On the matter of dual citizenship, I saw a letter from Ms. Teixeira. She was stating that there is at least one other government minister still in office sitting that has dual citizenship. Could you comment on this?
We've had information to that effect. And so, but as you know, it's difficult to confirm this because this is a private matter, it's a confidential matter. But we have had information to this effect. We've heard some people have seen that minister use a foreign passport. And that minister is not one of those who resigned. So we'd follow up on it. If not, thank you very much.